And it's now time for Talk Louder!
Hey, it's Metal Dave along with my co-host Jason McMaster, and welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today we're going to talk about opening bands, and by that I mean we're going to talk about opening bands that either impressed us and we weren't expecting much when we walked into the venue, or we're going to talk about opening bands that completely stole the show from the headliner. And I know we've both seen a lot of those sorts of bands, and probably more than we can talk about in one episode, but we're going to cover as much as we can today in just a minute. But first, let me bring in Jason. What's going on with you, man? What's happening? What's on your radar this week?
Still putting the house back together a little bit, sort of preparing for spring break or summer or stuff like that.
The heat wave.
Yeah, I did get, well, it was only 80 degrees. That's cold in Texas.
Yeah.
So, but I got in the pool basically to clean it, but I got my trunks on and I got in there and I was like, this is a bit too cold and maybe I'm just a big wimp or something. But had my pool vacuum and I'm in the pool wading around, and it's usually a fun little ritual. I got a
Yeah.
cup of coffee and stuff like that, and it's a beautiful day. Man, I was in there 5 minutes and my toes turned blue. I was like, I'm out. So I got out and yeah, I'd finished the rest of it with the long pole. So got that done, and no, everything's good.
So how many people have ever seen you in shorts?
Busy, not many at all. Not
I've known you for about 25 years, and I don't think I've
no,
ever seen you in
no,
shorts.
no. You don't want to.
Awesome. Okay, well, taking care of business at the swimming pool, getting it ready for the Texas heat wave.
That's right.
Yeah, I'll have to come over when that hits because we'll be dying at that point. I was driving around yesterday and I just randomly picked out a CD, and it was the first Buck Cherry record.
Hmm.
And I haven't listened to it in a while, and man, I was reminded of so many good memories and what an impact that CD made. And to be more accurate, the first album came out in 1999, and most people know it as the album that has the painted woman on the cover. But I have a 1998 Advance CD that was sent to me by the record label because I was being paid to write their bio. So I've got this 98 version, and it's no artwork, typewritten song titles. The name Buck Cherry is actually 2 words instead of 1, and it's lacking one of the songs that ended up on the final album. So it really is kind of a rarity of sorts, I guess. But man, I wore that thing out in 98, 99, took it everywhere I went, and played it for everyone that would listen and even some who wouldn't. And it reminded me of what a great album it was and how many great memories I have associated with it. At that time, they were kind of everything I wanted and needed in a rock band. It came out in, 99, so we're at the end of the grunge era, sort of not quite into the full-blown new metal thing. And here comes this band that's kind of, you know, picked up sort of where Guns N' Roses kind of left off, in my opinion. And it was everything I wanted, and it's a great album. And I was happy to revisit it today or yesterday, this week recently, or actually, it was a really good one when it came out, still a good one, stands up well. People talk about great debut albums, and they talk about Appetite for Destruction and Van Halen 1 and the first Boston album and the first Montrose record. And for my money, that first Buck Cherry record is right there in the mix. I love it.
Yeah, it's a fun record. I was at that show that you talk about that was at Stubbs downtown back
Yeah.
then, and it it was good, and then I heard the record after, and, the energy, I gotta say, was the same on the record that it was live, and that
Yeah,
usually doesn't happen. It's usually, the record is a little less, less in your less kick you in the head than the live show is.
right.
It was cool, man. I like how dry the production is on that record. There's not a lot of, like, fancy polish on the record. It's mixed and produced extremely well,
Yeah.
but it's pretty dry and raw, which is kind of a punk rock, way to do things, and
Right. And it probably wouldn't come as any surprise because it was co-produced by Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols, the guitarist from the Sex Pistols, along with Terry Date, who had made a name for himself at that point, working with I believe Pantera and Soundgarden, some real heavy hitters.
Metal Church.
Yeah, so you put those two talents together. One guy's got the heavy bottom end, and one guy's got the raw, energetic,
Yeah,
electric punk rock.
engineered by Bruce Bouillet from Racer X fame.
Is that right? Well, there you go.
Look it up,
Anyway, great
Rocket.
album.
Look it up.
Reminds me of a lot of great times
Yeah.
when I first got it. Here's a funny little side story on Buck Cherry. When I got to know them early on in their career because, like I said, I was asked to write their bios. So I interviewed them over the phone, and then I had some contact with them trying to get their story straight and all this jazz. Well, when they finally arrived in Austin and I got to see them live, the time that you mentioned at Stubbs, and then a subsequent time, they actually had a tour bus instead of a van. And they were playing at the back room. And I was on the bus hanging out with them before the show. And they had this ritual where
I've heard of the ritual,
the
the
ritual,
pre-show ritual.
yeah, the pre show ritual, for those who don't know, is they would crank up Metallica's Seek and Destroy, and everybody would jump around in the aisle on the bus and play air guitar and get stupid and get crazy and just kind of get the blood pumping in time to go on stage. And I was on the bus and got to, take part in that ritual, and it was a lot of fun. So, anyway, Buck Cherry, near and dear to my heart. That first album, it still stands up great. It's fantastic, and hadn't heard it in a while, but it still sounds great to this day. And today, this episode, we're talking about opening acts. And again, like I mentioned at the top of the show, these are opening acts that Jason and I saw that either impressed us right away or actually stole the show from the headliner. And I've got a few, but I'll let you go first. Jason, who stands out as somebody that knocked you out as the warm-up act?
Well, here's something that I wanna mention. It may not be, a show that I attended. It may be like a poster or like an ad with tour dates on it that has a lineup, and I'm going, "What? So and so's opening?" Like, I have this old Venom poster where Metallica had been invited to be the opening act on a Venom tour, and it may have been, the Seven Dates of Hell or something like that. So, it would have been in '83, uh, and I can just only imagine the mayhem, and the possibility that these young guys from California would have stood up to a Venom show, stood up, impressed the the Venom legions, of hell. I feel like I should be dramatic here because we're talking about Venom, but, I would
Are
imagine.
there any other kinds of Venom
Yeah, right,
fans?
I
Yeah.
bet. Well, you gotta add a bunch of drama when you talk about Venom because that's really all they got. So, that's what, and that brings me to say, and being a huge Venom fan, um, I would only imagine, just being a fly on the wall, that Metallica gave these, black metal earliest, visionaries of black metal gods, a run for their money. And I'm sure there's, some footage and some audio from those shows, and I'm sure that, the Metallicats are completely, firing on all cylinders and probably gave them a run for the money, if not blew them away. I don't know anybody was over there on that tour, but the poster kind of is, gives me this fantastical view of like, holy crap, I wish I could have been at one of those. I
Yeah.
also have another show poster where it's a little bit upside down of that, but in my opinion, would have been a show that I would have killed to be at, and that is Tank opening for Metallica on the Ride the Lightning tour. So
Wow.
Tank is this sort of unsung hero, three-piece English punk Motorhead vibe, sort of bluesy, band of pirates that they've got a slew of records out, and I don't know if they ever made it to the US, but you could still consider them probably to be a little bit of a late bloomer in the new wave of British heavy metal world. And Tank is probably a band that we should even talk about more on Talk Louder, and how they contributed. But three-piece, bluesy, pretty much baby Motorhead,
Yeah.
and they were very respected by Motorhead. The original Tank had a couple of brothers in it, and Algie Ward singing and playing bass, who was actually in The Damned for a little while. Algie
Wow.
Ward was in The Damned, and Lemmy being friends with The Damned as well, which makes a lot of weird sense to me.
Yeah.
I think he even played bass on a couple of songs, just hanging out with them or something. But the point that I was making is I had this. I think it's a German show, and Tank is on the as the opening support act, and in my brain, I'm just going, "Holy moly, this would have been a serious uh, show to attend."
Yeah.
Just because of the ilk of what it is. I mean, Metallica being an obvious champion of anything that is and stands for the new wave of British heavy metal. And here's Tank. I mean, it would be the same glory sort of vibe as Diamond Head opening for Metallica. It's
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? It's the same thing. So
Yeah.
those would have been shows. Who knew was sort of like who had the favorite that night. Who knocked out Muhammad Ali is not. It's never a contest anyway. It's a celebration of rock and roll. So
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that those are two things that are very fantastical, and there might be some things about that you might even want to bring up. So a band that might I've talked about, we did a show on our first concerts, and I gotta say, an opening band that I saw that made an impact, that made me love the band even more, and then eventually buy more of their material, was Angel. And honestly,
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of people who saw Angel,
Right.
but I saw Angel open for Ted Nugent, and it was like two different styles of rock and roll altogether. So
Yeah.
I can't really say that I was surprised by Angel enough to, like I said, to support them and become a bigger fan of theirs. My fandom of Ted Nugent did not change.
Right.
Therefore, I think that I walked away going, "Man, that was cool seeing Angels." Now it's like a legendary thing.
Yeah.
Um, what
Yeah.
you
Not many people can say they saw Angel. That's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
I don't know of anybody right off that, right immediate that I could say has seen Angels, so I feel
Yeah.
pretty lucky there.
Yeah. I have a long list of opening bands that impressed me, but the one that always comes to mind first is I saw Queensryche open for Kiss on. Kiss was touring the Animalize record, and Queensryche was promoting The Warning. And I am a lifelong Kiss fan, as you know. And of course, by the time Animalize came around, they weren't wearing the makeup. It wasn't the original band, but they were still, putting out some pretty good stuff. And I was still eager to go see them in concert and watch them play the hits and all that sort of thing. And I was familiar with Queensryche because I grew up in San Antonio where the DJ Joe Anthony was playing Queensryche as far back as the EP, the first release. So I was familiar with them, so they didn't catch me entirely out of the blue. But I remember watching them as a young, hungry, band full of really good players, a lot of energy. Jeff Tate's voice was like nothing you've heard, since Rob Halford. And Kiss was kind of, they were lacking the makeup. So, for a Kiss fan like me, it was already a downgrade to a degree. And I'm not saying Kiss was bad that night, but Queensryche came out ready to prove something, and they were at the top of their game, and they were fantastic. And I just remember leaving the arena thinking, wow, I think Queensryche just stole the show. They
I
were
saw
really
that.
good.
I saw that tour in Austin at the Frank Irwin Center, and I don't know. I remember just kind of walking around the venue. Um, I did like the warning. Uh,
Yeah,
I thought that that was a really cool sort of like, if I squint, some of this sounds like Iron Maiden, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And, I was cool with that.
yeah,
I had I had the and I was not interested in Kiss, which Kiss is that's a shocker because Kiss is one of my favorite bands,
right,
but not Animalize.
right, yeah,
So, and, there's no Ace and Peter. So I was one of those guys, still that was a while back. So I was
yeah. It was
still kinda like,
1985.
yeah, I was in a weird place as far as, my metalhead crown that I thought that I wore. I was not into Animalize whatsoever. But,
Yeah,
I was at that show. I saw Queensryche open for Quiet Riot. Someone else was on the bill as well, and that would have been at the Austin City Coliseum,
yeah,
which is now a grassy knoll down on Auditorium Shores. It's been
yeah,
bulldozed, and now there's just grass there with, I think, a gazebo or something,
yeah,
which is a sin because it's holy ground. Being
yeah,
the place that I saw Metallica on Ride the Lightning tour, February 21st of 1985 with
yeah.
Armored Saint.
With Armored Saint.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So anyway, yeah, I actually kind of like, got somehow got, the guys in Queensryche after their set, like, while Quiet Riot was on stage, I guess, Lita Ford might have been on that bill, and she might have been after Queensryche, I don't know. Anyway, I was next thing I knew, I was standing in front of Jeff Tate, and it was really strange. He had the headband on, and he had the bangs and the real straight hair, and the kinda had your hair, but real long, kinda
yeah,
Pat Benatar hair, but real long,
yeah. I
with
know what you're talking
the
about.
Pat Benatar headband. Uh, he I was just like, "Great show," and I couldn't really get anything other than a nod. Uh, but, I wanna say they were just supporting the EP, and the warning was either brand new or wasn't quite out yet.
Yeah,
And so I had the EP, which was on 512 Records with,
yeah.
Lady Wore Black and
Queen of the
the
Reich.
Reich and all that, right.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so they were, spectacular to see for me because I've never been that big of a Lita Ford fan, and Quiet Riot wasn't really my jam all the way. I liked Quiet Riot because they were kinda one of the early sort of like, torch carriers for, making heavy metal a household term.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
it was a great show, but I think Queensryche sorta, in my book, stole the show, so I don't doubt it that your love for Queensryche at that Kiss show was you were able to walk away with, some of their merchandise on your back and not Kiss Animalize.
yeah. They definitely blew me away and impressed me, and I, like I said, they stole Kiss's thunder, and this is coming from a lifelong Kiss fan. And again, to be clear, I was aware of Queensryche. I knew they had the music, I knew they had the songs, but to see them on stage in the big arena opening for the big boys, and they came to kick ass and take names, and they did. So I'll never forget that. That's one of the ones when people ask about opening bands that I remember. I'll never forget Queensryche stealing the show from Kiss in 1985. Another one I've got is a little bit out of our normal box, I guess you could say, even though we keep Talk Louder pretty wide open. But I was reviewing a show for a newspaper here in Austin, so they sent me to the gig, and the show was the Foo Fighters opening for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And I wasn't a huge fan of either band, but I was intrigued by Dave Grohl and what he was doing after Nirvana. And I interviewed him. It might have been on this same tour. This is 1997, so they're promoting the Color and the Shape album. And they opened for the Chili Peppers. And again, the Chili Peppers weren't bad, but the Foo Fighters, oh my God, they just completely stole the show. And Dave Grohl that was the first time I'd ever seen him as a frontman. And he was magnetic, man. I mean, he just had so much charisma, so much control over the crowd, so much friendly, casual banter. It wasn't like rock stars speaking to his minions. It was just a dude that had the microphone, and everybody responded.
Conversational, talking to the audience like there is people.
Yeah, and the audience responded.
Yeah, like he's at a party and he can have a conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was in the photo pit for that show. So I was taking photos. So I was really close, as close as you could get, actually. And Dave Grohl was just a phenomenal showman. And I remember there was a point in the show where, of course, he's wireless. So he's playing guitar, he's singing lead vocals, and he runs behind the drum kit, leaves the stage, disappears, and starts reappearing in different areas of the arena. And the spotlight, of course, is following him. And it was just really cool. I mean, of course, the crowd went wild for that whole, shenanigans and whatnot. But I remember being really, really impressed with the Foo Fighters and Dave Grohl as a frontman. So more power to them. I think they stole the show.
Your first time to see the Foo Fighters, I'm sure that Pat Smear was there.
It was the Color and the Shape tour. So yeah, he was there. And I don't know that was the first time I saw the Foo Fighters. It was because I saw them once at the Austin Music Hall, and I can't remember which came first, but I remember them at the Irwin Center, big arena, opening for the Chili Peppers, and yeah, they were sort of the new band, even though of course Dave had this history with Nirvana. But
right, I'm just bringing up Pat Smear because you are standing in front of a legend at that point.
Oh yeah,
He's in the room, you're standing in front of a legend. He's an older gent at this point.
Yeah.
He's been around the block. He helped create the punk scene of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that huge respect to that. Like Dave Grohl is smart. He knows what he's doing, and he was already friends with Pat when Pat joined Nirvana, of course. But there's a reason that he was in Nirvana. It's for all of the accolades that I'm basically glitter bombing upon to Pat right now.
Yeah.
Member of the infamous Germs.
I have another Pat Smear story, but I'll save it for another episode. But yeah. It's a fun one. Actually, it has something to do with Buck Cherry too, which is how I opened this show. But I'll save that for another time.
Okay.
Anyway, Foo Fighters, in my opinion, stole the show from the Chili Peppers in 1997. Great show.
Well, I might get monkey crap thrown at me for saying this, but that seems like an easy win for the Foo.
It does in hindsight, but the Chili Peppers were one of the biggest bands on the planet at that time, and the Foo Fighters of course, had a lot of name recognition because of Dave Grohl, but they hadn't really proven themselves out on the road and as an arena attraction as a live band yet, because they're only on their second album at that point. And I think the first album, Dave basically recorded that all by himself. So I don't even know how much touring they did behind that first album, although they did some. But they were not yet regarded as this fantastic high energy live band that we know them as today. So I think a lot of people were in that arena that night that went, wow, we knew that Dave Grohl was in Nirvana, but here he is fronting this band, playing guitar, and wow, who knew, man, that this thing was going to turn into such a cyclone of energy and a good time and, leave everybody blown away. So props to them. They were great.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there was any way for anyone to know at that point that Dave Grohl was just waiting to unleash,
Right,
him.
exactly.
He's playing drums in Nirvana. He's kind of been holding back when you
Yeah.
now
Well,
you know
he attacked the drums like a beast. So but as you know, I mean, stepping out from behind the drums and being the front man and playing guitar while you're at it is that's a pretty formidable task, and he did it in spades and is still doing it to this day. So give him a lot of credit.
There's a lot of drummers who are wizards, and Charlie Benanti is one of them.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a bunch of them. Steven Tyler
started as a drummer. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
He's a drummer.
Yeah.
He's percussive in the way that he sings. He sings in rhythm patterns.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Joey Ramone and Iggy Pop started as drummers too.
Important. It's important to realize that there's a lot of drummer in a lot of lead singers because there's patterns that they're working with. I've heard Dave Grohl talk about playing guitar. He attacks the guitar like he attacks the drums. He thinks of his hands as he's playing the drums. He thinks of a guitar as a drum, and the irony is there's fact that James Brown basically insisted to his band members, hired guns, whatever, that they need to play their instrumentation the way that they would play a drum.
Yeah.
It's important to think rhythmically because it's, he wants the audience to have ants in their pants.
Yeah.
He wants everyone to get up off of that thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the drummers, if you think like a drummer, you're gonna have good rhythm. So speaking of an Aerosmith show, of course, I've never seen Aerosmith open for anyone.
Right.
But I saw Megadeth open for Aerosmith.
I saw that too.
Very, very odd billing.
Well, that bill lasted about 5 dates, and then Aerosmith booted Megadeth off the tour. But I saw it in Houston. And go ahead with your story.
No, I was at the same show. We
were
at the same show. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah,
and
yeah.
Megadeth went on at 5 p.m. or something.
Yeah,
Sun shining. It was. They were getting a suntan while they were playing Peace Cells.
Yeah.
But I thoroughly enjoyed Megadeth in front of Aerosmith because it was kind of a kick in the pants when you hear Megadeth sort of sitting next to Walk This Way. There's kind of not really, I mean, it's like boogie woogie pop rock, mixed with sleaze and some old 70s rock and roll gods with a thrash metal band.
Yeah.
In front of it, it was kind of an odd bill, and I'm a huge Aerosmith fan, but it was really easy for me to walk away from that show going, I loved Megadeth that day.
Yeah.
And
I'm a huge Aerosmith
I was
fan.
Third row. I was like standing in the heat of it all.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like dropped dead center, and Mustaine even saw me, and he was like, "What are you doing here?" Looking right at me. And I was like, dude, I'm here to see you. And he could hear me say that because I was so close.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so that's a good one. There's one that I've mentioned on the show, and I'm going to mention it again. Is I went and saw Danko Jones the first time he ever played in Texas. He came through
Yeah.
and he was supporting Turbo Negro. Now, I had heard about Turbo Negro. I know a lot of people who think that band hung the moon.
Yeah.
You really recall where they're from? Are they Finnish?
I think
Swedish?
so. They're somewhere from somewhere
Yeah.
over there in
I
Scandinavia.
apologize to our listeners who are Turbo Negro freaks. I just don't know much about them,
Yeah.
and I for some reason I'm not completely sold on them. I don't know what my problem is. I apologize, but
I
because
like the fact that you think it's your fault.
yeah, well, I'm just trying to be nice to
No, I
people
get it.
who might be like
That's
Turbo
very
Negro
diplomatic of
freaks,
you.
because there are quite a few people that I still know that have these Turbo Negro like fan club jackets with the
Yeah.
past sewn on the back
Yep.
and like embroidered nicknames and stuff on the jackets, and they would meet on every Tuesday night at the local club and
Yeah.
listen to Turbo Negro for 3 hours and do shots or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey man, I think that if you can form your own fan club and have it be a weekly thing,
That's awesome.
you're keeping a club in business. It's like a scene from Cheers. And you're a fan, and I love it when people are like over the top about a band that they really really love.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so, but it's just too bad that I didn't get Turbo Negro the way they did. But the point, Danko was supporting Turbo Negro on a slew of dates in the U.S. Now, Danko had probably already opened many shows with these guys over in Europe because Danko's huge in Europe.
Yeah.
I was a new Danko fan. Someone in the UK sent me burned CDs of Danko to just go, what? You don't know who Danko Jones is? And I was like, I don't know. What's a Danko Jones? That sounds weird.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's a whole nother story. Please make note. Remind me to tell you that story about getting those Danko CDs, because
Yeah.
I got a burn of the Darkness, the first Darkness EP, or
Yeah. Yeah.
at the same time, and let's just say Danko won that fight.
Yeah.
But it's a funny story. So I was hooked the first time I heard Danko. So I see that he's opening for Turbo Who, and I told by that time all my friends, all the guys in Broken Teeth, everybody, and this would have been early 2000s, 2003, 2004, or something like that. And it was at Emo's outside here in Austin, Texas, and I was like one of like six people headbanging and singing all of the lyrics. And I'm standing next to a guy and I'm like, wow, how do you know all the words? And he's like, oh, I'm from up north and I'm down here going to college and I'm a huge fan because, I'm closer to Canada or something. Right.
Yeah.
And, Turbo came on and I couldn't even pay attention, but I'm just going to go on a limb and say Danko won that fight. He was Muhammad Ali. He just killed it.
Yeah.
Best energy anyone could ever have on stage. He was like a young D. Snyder on crack. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was just
Yeah.
out of control. And
Yeah.
I've been totally sick in the brain for Danko ever since. So
Yeah.
that's definitely one for the books that sort of changed my mind, especially when you think about the era. You know what I mean? You mentioned Buck Cherry earlier. I would imagine Buck Cherry kicked some serious ass on tours they've been on.
Yeah.
We're the opening band. They're just like someone unexpected. Buck Cherry, what's a Buck? Holy moly! After they saw them in front of Kiss or whoever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you turned me on to Danko Jones, and I've seen him numerous times because of you. In fact, you actually turned me on to some of those burned CDs that you were mentioning earlier, and I have them sitting right here in my collection to this day.
For the record, we have purchased the real,
Yes, yes, yes,
the
yes,
official
indeed.
releases of those CDs, and the burn CDs were only to sort of do some
Introduced.
trading
Yeah,
and introduce, right? Just
yeah,
for the record, for the FBI.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, Danko, he's a tough act to follow. He's fierce, man. I know that word is overused a lot today, but it's the perfect word for Danko Jones. And if I was in a band, I wouldn't want to follow him, man. He's a tough act to follow. So yeah, I can imagine.
I saw him open for Volbeat in San Antonio. And then once again, that is a show that I've mentioned on Talk Louder before. And I feel like San Antonio, of all places, known as heavy metal capital of the world, may be arguable at this point. Not in my eyes, of course,
Yeah,
because I'm from here. But my point is, San Antonio didn't get it. It didn't really translate in my eyes. I'm looking at it around like, man, everyone's crazy here. They're just standing there, not feeling this energy, or maybe their minds were blown. I just expected there
yeah.
were more Danko fans. Maybe they were standing there,
Shell
mouth agape.
shocked.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
And I hope he sold a bunch of merch that night, and I hope he did well. But I was just there for Danko. I
Yeah,
didn't even know what a Volbeat was, and
right.
to this point, don't really understand Volbeat. Like, it's
Yeah.
Turbo Negro and Volbeat. I'm trying to gather my thoughts on that still here 15, 20 years later.
Danko Jones, formidable band for sure.
Yep.
Um, here's another one that always comes to mind when people ask me this question about opening bands, stealing the show. I saw White Zombie in 1992 open for Danzig. And at the time, I was very familiar with Danzig, and just starting to get acquainted with White Zombie. And again, living in San Antonio, I had maybe more of an advantage than the rest of the country. I know that the Make Them Die Slowly record was on sale at Hog Wild Records, and they had the EP where they got in some trouble with Gene Simmons because they had his likeness on the EP. But their major label debut, Las Exorcisto, was on Geffen Records, and they were out promoting that record. And that's the album that has Thunder Kiss 65 and Black Sunshine. They were starting to make a splash on MTV. Beavis and Butthead were championing them. And so I went to the show excited about both bands because I'm a big Danzig fan, and I was liking what I was seeing and hearing out of this White Zombie band. And they went on stage, and it was a whole nother animal. It was like nothing I'd seen before because they kept the strobe lights going almost constantly. And you remember White Zombie, they had the dreadlocks. So there's these dreadlocks flying around, strobe lights going bananas the whole time. It was like you were having a seizure. And the music was just this wall of sound, and it was kind of metallic grunge sort of art, sort of weird mishmash of music, but it was heavy and super fuzzy.
Devil
And
Disco.
Devil Disco, yeah.
Devil Disco. Yeah.
Yeah. But they were just, I mean, again, I don't really know how to describe them because at that point they were like nothing I'd ever seen before. The strobe lights and the dreadlocks and the sampled sound effects, and they were not a verse chorus verse kind of band, so it wasn't like you could sing along or quite find the hook. It was in there, but they were just an assault on your senses. And I remember thinking, wow, Danzig's got their work cut out for them, because that just blew my mind. And Danzig, again, like I've said on some of these previous bands that I've been discussing, Danzig was great. No, not knocking Danzig. They came out and did a great job. But White Zombie really impressed me that night. And then, of course, they were very short-lived.
It's those two different, and it's similar to some of the shows that we've talked about in this same episode, where like the Megadeth Aerosmith thing. That's like, it's a weird sort of like, well, I like this one. Well, I like this one too. You know what I mean? Which one do I take a bite of first? Kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Danzig is way more dramatic than White Zombie, and White Zombie has this. Um, there's a lot of drama, but it's very haunted house at the carnival,
Yeah, exactly.
which makes it work with Danzig, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's also very cartoony at the same time,
Yeah.
and
Dan, yeah,
the
that's
description of it is devil disco for sure because it's basically heavy metal dance music, and the
yeah, yeah,
strobe lights are kind of proving that,
that's
and
fair.
yeah, and each member of White Zombie kind of seemed like a comic book hero of some kind.
Right, right. I
I
like that
get
you mentioned, I like that you draw the comparison to movies, because if you were going to do that, Danzig would be like the psychological thriller and White Zombie would be the slasher flick, you know?
sure, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
anime,
But yeah, 1992, White Zombie, they were hungry and they put on a show like nothing I'd seen at that point, and they
but
gave Danzig a run for their money.
I saw White Zombie headline the venue I've been speaking about, the Austin City Coliseum, no longer there, with the Obsessed.
Oh, that's Wino's band,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I want to say Prong was on the bill as
that
well.
sounds right. Yeah,
And obviously the 90s, you know,
yeah.
Prong was supporting that big record. I can't recall the name right now.
Beg to differ or cleansing?
Cleansing.
Cleansing. Okay.
The cleansing.
The
Snap your fingers,
cleansing.
snap your neck.
Yeah.
Snap your fingers, snap your neck. Yeah. Totally loved that record. Was blown away by Prong and was very happy to see the Obsessed because they're kind of this underground legendary sort of like a Sabbath disciple, influenced a lot of the stoner rock
Yeah.
culture. Um,
Yeah.
and Wino's work with Saint Vitus and things like that should be
Yep.
mentioned. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's kind of like Rob Zombie's cool. He's well versed and he knew what he was doing the whole time. That's why he's basically a producer. Period. He puts things together and they work because they're well thought out and he knows how
Yeah.
to he hits execute. He knows how to hit the red button and make it
Yeah.
work. So
He's
yeah.
what you call a visionary, I
Yeah,
guess.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. He's
Yeah.
a cool cat. Now, I think that when he's not singing through effects, he's not he's not
I've
much
never
of
heard
a
him not sing through
well,
effects.
he made a couple of records as Rob Zombie where he streamed down and he took a lot of the, underwater digital effects off of his microphone and you can tell that yeah, you need to put that back on there, bro.
Yeah.
You
Well,
don't sound so much like a monster anymore. You need to keep the monster thing going on.
yeah. Well, they left an impression on me for sure when I saw
Oh
him
yeah,
open for Danzig. That was a great double bill. No,
awesome.
no disrespect to Danzig because they came out and did a great job too. But White Zombie was just like, whoa, yeah. Here's another one. This one's going to be a little bit obvious because everybody that was there would say the same thing. But I saw, and you might have been there. I saw Metallica play the Texas Jam, and they were about third build.
Mm,
Jason Newsted was new to the band, and Justice for All was not quite in the record stores yet.
wow.
They played Harvester of Sorrow uh, for the audience before the album was out, and nothing else mattered, to paraphrase Metallica, after they were done. And I'm talking about a bill that still had Scorpions and Van Halen on top. But the guys I felt the most sorry for was Dokken, because Metallica came out in the middle of the afternoon, and just there's 85,000 people at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, Texas, and they just destroyed that place. And then poor Dokken had to come on with their melodic hard rock, and I mean, they just didn't stand a chance after Metallica. And then, Scorpions and Van Halen came on. Scorpions, we've talked about them on previous episodes. They've always been really reliable. They always put on a great show. They're always great performers. They're always at the top of their game. And so they came out and did a great show. Um, but where do you go after Metallica, especially in 1988, you know?
It's a different kind of a fan, I want to say. I might get shot at for saying that, but I think that, I used to say this joke when I do my Metallica tribute band. I usually use Dokken as a punching bag, and I'm sorry if you're a Dokken fan, but it's you'll understand the joke when I tell the joke. It's like, in 1983, when Kill 'Em All came out, and you heard it, and we heard it, and they heard it, and the guy and girl sitting next to the guy and girl sitting next to the guy and girl, when they all heard it, it made you want to throw away your Dokken record.
I've heard you say that.
It made you think like that,
Yeah.
and I think that it's of importance to, and I don't even mean disrespect to Dokken when I say that. I'm just saying you don't have a chance after Metallica. I feel like there's not a contest going on in this show, by the way, but let's go to Hatebreed opening for Slayer. This would have been early 2000s. I saw it at La Zona Rosa, which is a fairly small venue.
Yeah.
And I think they may have done 2 nights. I think they did 2 or 3 nights, and they were all sold out. And Hatebreed was opening. Now, who opens for Slayer? You know what I mean? Talk about not having a chance in hell. That's very fitting.
Right.
And I think it's Hatebreed opens for Slayer.
Yeah.
The brutality is there. It's, if you want to get hit in the face repeatedly with nunchucks by the opening band before you go and get hit in the face repeatedly again by Slayer, it's going to be Hatebreed. And I think that there's something to that. And it was just, it was mania.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying about the Texas Jam. Now, to be fair, that bill was booked, as all bills are, based on stature, right? So at that time, Dokken had sold more records. They were a bigger mainstream attraction than Metallica. Metallica is just, they're coming off of Master of Puppets, which is starting to kick down the door, but they're still, compared to a Scorpions or compared to a Van Halen, they're not quite there yet, and can
I ask who went on before Metallica?
Yeah, before Metallica was Kingdom Come.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then anybody else?
I think I might be getting my Texas Jams mixed up, but I want to say there was a local-ish band called Fahrenheit 451 that was either on that bill or the year before. So Metallica was like about third on the bill that day.
You know who I'm going to, this is probably not true, but I don't know why I want to say this, that like Bob Rock was in Fahrenheit 451 or what? It's a terrible band name, by the way. Somebody famous was in that Fahrenheit.
Yeah. I know Bob Rock was in a band because Metallica makes fun of him in one of those documentaries because he kind of had the girly hair and whatnot.
Somebody that's not, maybe not a household name, but someone we know that's, in the industry, I think was in that band. I don't know them to be a local band. I think that they probably paid to play, but they were up and comers kind of a thing.
Well, the point being that Metallica was third on the bill on that day, and they came out in the blazing hot sun, and it was just hotter than Hades, and they were just hungry, and they had Newstead was relatively new to the band, so he's trying to prove himself. The band is trying to prove that they can get up in front of a Scorpions or a Metallica and command an arena of 80,000 people, and they just wiped the floor with that place. I mean, they just killed it.
They never went on that time of day ever
again. Yeah. And by the way, Van Halen was headlining that bill, and
Van Hagar.
With Hagar, yeah. And
just to be clear for David Lee Roth fans,
right.
Just want to make
and
sure
I think Hagar's. I think that's the Van. I think that's the. I think that's the gig where Hagar's voice crapped out on him, and they had to they had to pull off they pulled out early and said, we'll be back and we'll play a free gig. And they did years later. They made good on that. But anyway, Metallica in front of Scorpions, Van Halen, and Dokken. And I don't think anybody went home talking about anybody other than Metallica. So yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of that's another one of those things. That's kind of the reason we're doing this show right now. It's like bands you see opening for someone else, you'll never see them open for anyone else ever again, probably. And Metallica's one of those bands.
Right. I have one more, and we touched on this briefly in a previous episode. You mentioned Quiet Riot earlier in this episode, and I saw Quiet Riot. The bill was Helix, Whitesnake, and Quiet Riot. And yeah, Whitesnake was supporting the Slide It In record.
Yes.
And Quiet Riot was supporting the Condition Critical record. And I saw the show in San Antonio, and I liked Quiet Riot on the Metal Health record, but by Condition Critical, they were already starting to lose me.
I can say the same exactly.
Yeah, I don't know what. It's like they made their mark, and I'm glad they did. And that Metal Health record was a pretty solid record. I like what it did as far as putting heavy metal into the mainstream and all that good stuff. But man, it seems like they just, I don't know, the second record didn't live up to it at all. And meanwhile, here comes Whitesnake. So it's the Slide It In tour. They got John Sykes on guitar. They're not yet this pretty boy hair band that they would become a couple years later. So there's still kind of that bluesy British hard rock band that's more about bell bottoms and leather jackets instead of the poofy hair and the spandex and all that stuff. And I think that was the first time I ever saw Whitesnake, and they stole the show.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. I saw that. What venue?
I saw it in the arena in San Antonio. So it was the Hemisphere Arena in San Antonio.
Yeah, I saw it at Palmer Auditorium down on Auditorium Shores. I saw that exactly. Awesome. With Helix, Whitesnake, and Quiet Riot. Now, I must say that Helix was very fun, and that was my first time to see them. I think I had seen them. Maybe that Give Me an R. Oh, yeah. Rock You. What you gonna do? That thing. Yeah, and they were fun.
Yeah.
But that's all I could remember by them, and it's really all I can still remember by them is that catchy Give Me an R, right? And Canadian rock bands, I'm a sucker for Canadian rock bands. There's a ton of Canadian rock and metal that I really like, but that's one that didn't really, I don't think I've ever owned a Helix record.
Yeah.
No disrespect to them, right, at all. But I remember they were fun. I got there early and I saw the whole show, but for the most part, I was there to see Whitesnake.
Yeah.
Because exactly what you said, I don't want to repeat everything. They had John Sykes.
Yeah.
They had Cozy Powell.
Yeah, that's right.
And they had, I want to say the bass player they had, I wish I could remember his name right now.
I'm going to say Neil Murray.
Yes, you're exactly right. Now, what's his background again?
Geez.
Didn't he play? He played with someone else.
He's one of those guys that probably drifted in and out of Deep Purple and Rainbow and just like everybody else.
That's a show we haven't done yet.
Yeah, don't hold me to it, but yes, right. He does have a background.
And we're going to hear that name again.
Yeah.
And they may have had a keyboard player that night. They may have not. They probably did because a lot of those songs have like organ and stuff on them. But anyway, that Slide It In record was huge. I love the Slow and Easy was on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
Video for Slide It In, I think, was all over MTV. This would have been about 83 or 84.
It was 85 when the tour.
85, okay.
Yeah.
85, okay. And I was blown away by Whitesnake. especially John Sykes and his guitar playing. Now, I wanted to see John Sykes because I'm a big Tigers of Pantang fan, and he was just out of Thin Lizzy.
Right.
And like a year and a half out of Thin Lizzy, right? So
Yeah.
that was still he was still a member of legendary bands, and here he is with Whitesnake.
Yeah.
And we've talked about John Sykes before on Talk Louder about when Coverdale, the labels, like, you know, you need prettier, you need people who are willing to wear pink and green on stage with sparklies all over. But if you think about John Sykes, he never really did that. He was more a simpleton sort of British guitar player that wanted to wear leather pants and maybe a pirate shirt.
Yeah.
And that's as glam as he's going to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was a great show. I stayed for Quiet Riot, but Whitesnake stole the show. And and I even want to say that just hearing that one hit song by Helix, I remember that more than I remember Quiet Riot.
Well, Helix, you'll remember there was another, they had that song, Heavy Metal Love. I know you know that song.
Yeah. Actually, I do like that song. I just forgot about it.
And they had an early track that Joe Anthony used to play on the radio in San Antonio. It was a ballad, and it's something like, well, there was another one called Deep Cuts the Knife. That was a Helix tune that was on the radio. And there was one that went back even earlier that's, I'm going to mess up the title, but it's something like, geez, it reminds me of that title, "Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon," but that's not it. But it's the sentiment is similar to that.
That's Urge Overkill doing a cover of that.
Yeah. Okay, so
when I think of that, I think of Urge Overkill. But anyway, it also cements the demand in my brain that we must do a Talk Louder episode on Canadian rock.
Yes.
So we still have to do that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Canadian rock, and we will talk about Helix again.
Yeah.
So do you have another one?
Well, I was going to add one more footnote to that Whitesnake show. So I decided to go to that gig at the last minute. So I tagged along with some friends who already had their tickets, and we get to the venue, and of course I don't have a ticket yet. So they were nice enough to stand in line with me at the box office so I could purchase a ticket at the venue. And as we're standing in this line, a taxi cab pulls up behind us, and Coverdale and Sykes jump out of the cab. They walk around to the back. The cab driver is with them. He pops the trunk. Sykes reaches into the trunk, pulls out his guitar case, and Sykes and Coverdale walk past the crowd into the arena, onto the concourse, and disappear. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, oh my God, that's the guys from Whitesnake. You know, I'm a kid, right? And I'm just in awe that those guys got out of a taxi cab right in front of me and then just walked right through the crowd.
Rock stars are people too, Dave.
I know, right? Well, you know, when I'm 18 or 19 years old or whatever, the last thing I'm expecting is these guys that I'm about to see on stage jump out of a taxi cab and walk through the crowd.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget that. But yeah.
Awesome.
You got any others that come to mind?
I saw Riot open for Saxon. And that is a huge deal. And
God,
once again, this is like chalking it up next to sort of, you know, why and what I'm going to take home and from this experience kind of a thing, because, you know, and it was Rhett Forrester, it was Restless Breed, I believe. And I can't remember the record Saxon was touring. I think I'd already seen him on that year. It was just Another Leg or something.
Yeah.
But my mind was blown. I was seeing legendary bands, and I have to say I enjoyed both probably. Well, maybe Saxon, maybe I'll favor Saxon, but I'm telling you,
Riot made an impression.
Riot, I mean, I had already seen Riot. I saw Riot totally kill it opening for someone who I can't even remember on Fire Down Under now being all I remember is Riot.
Wow.
All I remember is the Fire Down Under tour. And I want to say at Palmer Auditorium at the same venue that I saw Whitesnake at. And you know, Riot, Riot's one of those bands that I was never going to see headline, just like Cheap Trick. I would never see them headline. I would always see them in an arena, in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
And I don't know. This show is not about underdogs, but it kind of is, because we're sitting here talking about bands that, obviously, I mean, when you mention Metallica, you're not really talking about an underdog really at all until you are talking about it. I'll throw one in here, and this has been mentioned before. I mean, I have trophies hanging on the wall over there from this show, and it was Wednesday, August 24th, 1983, and that is Metallica opening for Raven.
Oh, wow!
You just can't see what I'm saying. So here's these kids on their first tour. They're on tour opening for some of their idols.
Right.
So it's like the band that's influenced by nothing but new wave of British heavy metal bands opening for a new wave of British heavy metal band that they're influenced by. So it was not a disgruntled fan. No refunds were given. People might have gotten hurt from the excitability and just the fire in the room. And that did actually happen. I don't know if you remember, I talked about this, where there was a pit. I was in said pit. I got an elbow to the face, and John Gallagher from Raven came out and finally could see the whole thing, and I could barely understand his accent, but he came to check on me. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I mean, it was just no way around it. I saw that show 2 or 3 times on that tour with Raven, and it was mind blowing to just see where the opening band, you could walk away and go, man, I'm seeing something special. Yeah. And I knew I was seeing something special.
Yeah.
But there was, it was definitely, it was like the Riot and the Riot opening for Saxon. It's like, what? I saw Loudness open for Keel, I think. And or maybe it could have been Keel open for Loudness, and it was pretty unbelievable as well. But since I don't recall who was opening it, I guess it doesn't really fit. I'm just bragging now.
Right. Well, I think we mentioned some good ones today, and I'm sure if we put our brains together, we'd come up with 3 more shows on this very topic, because we've seen plenty of concerts, and I know you and I have been impressed at the very least and blown away on many occasions by.
Yeah, I was thinking. Of course, I was thinking earlier about your experience with the Plasmatics.
Yeah.
Opening for Kiss, and how you were there to see the Almighty, and then you were like, what?
Yeah.
You were bummed that Riot, the kings of support act, the king of support bands, had to cancel for whatever reason, and then you're like, oh man, and then pleasant surprise, boom.
Yeah. Violent surprise. But I was disappointed that I was going to have to sit through the Plasmatics to see my heroes Kiss. And you're right, the Plasmatics just, I was damaged after that, and that was my very first concert. So that's another case. That's another concert that fits the topic of the show. I talked about it on past episodes, so I was going to try and cover some different ground today. But certainly. The Plasmatics opening for Kiss blew my mind for sure. Yeah, most definitely.
So I think that we should mention that this idea for talking about the support bands and the opening bands, And making it a show topic has been brought to you again by Bob Sutcliffe from
Bob Sutcliffe.
Kansas.
Yeah, we're
And
gonna have to.
give him some credit. He's an
Yeah,
honorary member of the staff here at Talk Louder. So this one's for
right.
you, Bob. But
Exactly.
you know, in kind of hindsight now, you can go the other way where I've gone to see. I'm probably going to get shots for this too, but dude, I saw Soundgarden open for Guns N' Roses, and I was ready to be all blown away by Soundgarden, and I felt like they fell short. Um, Not because you know, Guns N' Roses is the better band or anything like that. I just feel like had an off night. I don't know what it was about Soundgarden. It didn't translate to me. So we
Yeah,
could do a show about how you're gonna go see this incredible bill, and then you realize, oh well, there's a reason Guns N' Roses is blowing up right now. You
yeah.
know, and there's a reason why maybe I love Soundgarden and I'm going to see them, and then I'm like, I wonder how come it's like kind of sounds kind of half-ass.
That sounds
So,
like an odd mix to me.
well, I was saying the performance of Soundgarden
Right, right.
didn't. There was no train. You know, in a club, maybe standing 3 feet away from the band in a club, you know, seeing Soundgarden. That would be something that there was no way I would have been able to not get the
Yeah,
vibes they were throwing down. But in an arena setting, it didn't work the same way.
yeah.
I
It's
wanted it to.
some bands are capable of commanding an arena, and some bands were just built for clubs. And that's not a knock on those bands that are built for clubs, because some of the best shows I've ever seen are clubs, because it's all about that intimacy and the sweat and the volume and the stink and the energy.
You're talking about a whole new episode of
I
Talk about
know,
clubs
I
and
know.
versus arenas.
We
So
should wrap this one up before we turn it into
that's right.
another one.
That's right. Well, it was a great show. Enjoyed the
Yeah,
show.
yeah, good topic. Opening bands that impressed us or stole the show. Let's move on to Shot of Rock. I'm going to be totally random today, and that's kind of what Shot of Rock is all about, or can be anyway. But I was listening to the radio the other day, which I rarely do, in
Shame
my
on you.
car.
Yeah.
What?
Shame on you.
Yeah, I know. Shame on me. I guess I didn't have a CD within reach or something like that. But anyway, Bad Company came on,
Uh,
a band with a lot of great songs, and I thought,
you are
here's one.
forgiven.
I am going to ask Jason to name his favorite Bad Company song.
Song would be really, really hard.
Narrow it
Maybe
down. Narrow it down.
maybe something from the first album, maybe something from Run with the Pack, maybe something from Straight Shooter, because those three records are like they're biblical to me.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a huge Paul Rogers fan. I don't know if you knew that. I don't know if anyone knew that about me, but wow, if I have to pick one song, uh, I don't think people are going to expect this, but today, the only song I can think of, and I love them, there's a lot I love about Bad
Sure.
Company: Silver, Blue, and Gold.
Ooh, was not expecting that. That's a good one. Nice. Nice.
Yeah, it's
That's a
a
very
it's a
soulful tune.
very, very well written song, and I like the production back then. Uh, that it's probably live. They probably recorded the instrumentation live and probably overdubbed the vocals. It just has this energy, and it is soulful. It's almost a gospel song, and it breaks
Yeah.
down in all of the verses. It's really pretty in the verses, and then when they kick into the verse, it's almost like a Motown vibe in
Yeah.
the choruses. Um, and there's something to say about Bad Company. You know, it, I Maybe some might argue with the fact that I'm going to call myself a songwriter, but I write songs.
Sure.
It's hard to write a song that doesn't need harmony vocals to make the song have a hook, to feel like the song is going to translate. It's really easy to just stack a bunch of harmonies and throw in some gang vocals to give the song more depth and more attention.
Yeah.
Bad Company is one of those bands, much like Soundgarden. Chris Cornell can write a great song that doesn't really need a whole lot of harmonies or backups or anything.
Yeah.
Paul Rodgers is one of those guys that can write a melody and write a song that has a lift, and that's all you need is that one melody. Doesn't need a bunch of harmony vocals that bring it out. Like, I love Journey, but Journey has a shit ton of harmony vocals on all of their tunes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's an interesting sort of like side note to that. But yeah, I'm going with Silver, Blue, and Gold.
That's a great
That's
one.
good shot of rock and roll.
Oh, great answer. I was not
Bad
expecting
Company,
that.
Bad Company is kind of a left field right now. I didn't expect you to bring that up. I've got a what might seem fairly random. Is have you ever met Kiss? And I know you've interviewed Gene and that counts, but have you ever like met him like in person?
I've met
Any
Ace Frehley.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. I've interviewed Gene twice, Paul once, Peter once, and oddly enough, I've met Ace but never interviewed him. So the thing with Ace was he was playing here in Austin as part of that Bat Fest celebration, like a street festival for those that aren't familiar. And he was in town playing that, and my friend Mario Escovedo, who fronts a band that's now defunct, a band called the Dragons out of San Diego, great rock and roll band. They put out a few records and then disbanded, but I met them. We became friends. They were here every South by Southwest for like 13 years running. They had this incredible streak of South by Southwest. So we were friends. Well, their bass player, Steve Rodriguez, bless his soul, passed away a few years ago. And the Dragons were doing a memorial show to raise funds for Steve's family. And lo and behold, Ace Frehley shows up and does a few songs with the Dragons in Steve's memory. So I see there's YouTube video of it. And so I was talking to Mario and made some joke about the fact that Ace Frehley's coming to town. This is a couple years later. I said, Ace is coming to town. I'm going to the show. I'm going to wear my Dragon shirt just to, in honor of you and the boys, And he says, you should get in touch with this guy named Tom. He's road managing Ace and he'll hook you up. And I was like, really? and he said, yeah, just try and reach out to him. So he gave me his name and I found him on Facebook and I messaged the guy and I said, hey, we have a mutual friend, Mario Escovedo, and I know you're traveling with Ace and you're on your way to Austin where I live. I'm going to be at the show. And if it's possible to say hello to just you, not even Ace, just I want to say hi to you because you're buddies with my buddy, And I said, I'll be easy to spot. I'll be down front wearing a Dragon shirt. And he says, great, I'll look for you. So we go to the gig. And sure enough, Ace is staying in this hotel that's right next to the stage in downtown Austin. It's literally walking distance to the stage. So I get down there and I am sort of strategically placing myself like at the foot of the stage off to the side where I can kind of see the action going on behind the stage. And here they come walking from the hotel to the stage. And this guy who I've never met before sees me standing there in my Dragons t-shirt. And he points at me and kind of winks and he's like, you're the guy. And I was like, you must be Tom. And he comes over to me and he says, let me get him on stage and I'll come talk to you for a minute and we'll hang out a bit. And I said, do what you got to do. So he gets Ace on stage, comes over, we talk. And then at the end of the night, he takes me up to Ace's hotel room and we got to spend about 10 minutes with Ace Frehley, just taking photos and hanging out and, you know, shooting the bull. And that's the only time I've met a member of KISS, but it was super cool because I didn't pay for it. It was totally based on friendship, a friend of a friend, and connections. And Ace was super cool. And Tom, I got to give a shout to Tom Rulon. He made it happen, and a shout to Mario Escovedo because he, you know, connected me to Tom. So, yeah, Ace is the only one I've ever met, but it was an honor, as you can imagine.
That's pretty legit. It blows away my meetings of anyone in KISS. I met Gene and Paul at a it was a benefit. It was in Los Angeles. I don't remember. It was like a sports complex. Mark Gehry from Dangerous Toys was playing softball on a team with like Janie Lane. I think it was called JT Martell Foundation.
Yeah.
It's like making money for kids and stuff. And we were all there in support. And there was, you know, it was in Los Angeles. There were rock stars everywhere. And our publicist took us to meet Gene and Paul. There was a bowling alley on site, and we get in this bowling alley, and there's no one around. There was no handlers, there was no security or management or anything. And Gene and Paul are just over here hanging out by these bowling lanes, and no one's bowling. So, you know, where you go to like release the ball, they're just standing on the bowling on the lane, so we all walk over. And it was like shaking hands with a tree. You know, they were just looking over my head. They weren't looking me in the eye. And I just shook their hand. They were just holding their hands out all limp like they were royalty or something. It was, they looked out of place.
Yeah.
Totally out of place. So I need to just kind of give that one to them just to be fair, because they just looked out of place.
Yeah.
And it was very anticlimactic. There was nothing. I walked away going, okay, that was pretty weird. Where's the cameras? Because it's pretty weird. It's like David Lynch film or something, you know?
Yeah.
They were KISS and I was the Phantom. It's like I wasn't even there, right? And then La Semana, years later, handful of years later, La Semana, ooh man, probably 90s, some, you know, mid 90s, maybe, you know, 93, 94, KISS played.
That was like early 90s, because I think I was living in Galveston at the time and couldn't go to the show, and I was bummed out.
Okay. Well, I had, I had the cool guy passes and all that. And, you know, it's a free for all back there because it's in a giant parking lot, as you know, this festival, right?
Yeah.
Tons of bands play, but in the backstage area, I mean, because there's like golf carts racing everywhere and runners and all the buses are back there, and they can't really, I'm not going to say afford, but nothing's really roped off other than the fence that goes around, that basically is roping off, if you will, corralling general admission. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Paul's back there, and there's a line of like, I don't know, 7 or 8 people, and they've got stuff for him to sign. And I'm back there with nothing except my stick-on pass. It's not a laminate. It's not that cool. But I peel this stick-on pass, this after-show kind of thing, and I stick it on my hand to hold out my hand so he can sign it. And I'm in the line. I'm not cutting. I'm not telling him who I am. I'm not trying to, you know, say, hey, I'm somebody, let's hang out. You know, it was nothing like that. I got in line. Other people had koozies and maybe they had a poster or maybe an album cover or something like that. I didn't have anything. Yeah. I'm like, holy crap, that's Paul Stanley. You know, I'm freaking out. I'm a fan. So I get up there and I hold out my hand with this lame ass stick-on backstage pass stuck to my hand. I'm holding it out for him to sign because there's, you know, we're not at a table, right?
Right. There's nothing. Yeah.
And I don't want to put it on my breast and have him sign that, you know. Yeah. Maybe I should have at this point. Here's where I'm getting is he sees the pass, he looks up at me, and he goes like this. He puts the cap on the Sharpie in my face, turns around and walks away. Didn't sign it.
This is Paul?
I got dissed by Paul Stanley.
Oh.
That's
Does
my
he know
story.
how much money you've spent on him in all your lifetime?
Obviously, it didn't matter to him.
Well, that's a great story for all the wrong reasons, man.
Yeah, I had to get over that one, you know?
Yeah.
It makes me really wonder what I might have done to upset him.
Oh,
But
man.
it makes me sort of fantasize that, like, maybe he knows who I am, and maybe I know someone that he knows, and maybe I was mean to them, or maybe he's surely Paul Stanley's not jealous of me for some reason, you know?
Right, right.
So it was, I don't know. It's one of those freak out, like stranger than fiction type of
Wow.
stories.
Wow. Two opposite experiences.
Yeah, and I
You got
can't make
this.
I
You
can't
got,
make that up. I can't
yeah,
make that story up. It's a
yeah.
true story.
Wow. Dissed by Paul Stanley.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Man, all right. Well, let's save some for another episode. This has been fun. I enjoyed talking about opening bands, and I loved your Kiss story, and I loved your selection of Bad Company tune. That was a good one. Was not expecting that. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. Remind you when you go to our YouTube channel and you watch the videos of the show, please hit the subscribe button. Leave your comments on our message boards. Leave your comments on our Facebook page. We saw a lot of good feedback this week. You guys chiming in on some of the topics, and I love that. I love hearing what bands you've seen and what stories you have, and you know, the adventures that you've had in rock and roll. It's not just about me and Jason, it's about you as well. So feel free to share, and we'll get back to you. We'll answer, and we'll continue the conversation on our various platforms. But until next time, on behalf of my co-host Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave Glessner, and thank you for listening to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast.